You're definitely a brave man.
Some people might say a little crazy. No, you don't want to get stung by that. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Yes, I do.
You're like one of a kind, definitely.
Thank you. What? Hi, Cindy. Never started a podcast like this before.
Hey everyone, I'm Ruben Lambras and I'm here on my farm in Namibia. So today I want to welcome you to my brand new interview series. I'll be speaking to some of the world's most leading conservationists, wildlife rescuers and content creators who have a mission in life to share their passion and love for animals and nature and also to protect them. I'll hear about their inspiring stories and the pivotal moments that led them on their journeys. I'm very excited and privileged that Coyote Peterson, the American wildlife educator, YouTuber, author, and TV host, is joining me today. Best known for his extreme yet educational wildlife encounters on his YouTube channel, he explores animal behavior, conservation, and most famously, the pain index of stings and bites. He's also responsible for introducing millions of young viewers to wildlife appreciation and conservation. Be brave, stay wild, that's his slogan. Welcome, Coyote. Before we start, I want to show you someone special, so come with me.
Okay, we're going on a field trip.
Yes, let's go.
Never started a podcast like this before. I'm excited.
It's actually my oldest sister. Her name is Cindy.
Okay.
Cindy, say hello.
What? Hi, Cindy.
She's
Oh my
a 30-year-old baboon, and she's like my sister. Since I was born, she was here. She's totally wild now, but yeah, this is my sister Cindy. She just wanted to greet you.
Hi, Cindy. Oh my gosh, she's beautiful.
Yeah.
That
Right,
is
Cindy, she
so
just
cool.
get happy. Get happy. Let's give her a little snack. Cindy, happy.
Ooh, nice.
Nice. Some blueberries.
Ooh, blueberries, one of my favorites.
See
Oh
you
my
later.
gosh, she's so cute. How old is she?
She's 30 years old now, so yeah, I'm
Wow,
26.
30 years old. That's crazy. I don't know how long baboons can live. So is that up there for a baboon?
So normally they would live like 18 years in the wild, but she's 30 years by now, so she's way past the life expectancy.
She seems pretty chill. I mean, if you can sit in the backyard and get blueberries and every once in a while pop up on a Zoom call, I guess that's a pretty good life.
She have a good life, but she's now blind for 2 years, so we have to feed her and guide her everywhere. So it's quite a process. Definitely.
Well, sending big hugs to Cindy. Thanks for introducing me to her. That was awesome.
So Coyote, there's two more people I want to introduce you to. Just hold on a second. And here's Jerry and Minky.
What? You've got meerkats?
I do. Yeah, that's Minky, Jerry, the male and female, and yeah, these are all orphan animals we take care of.
Oh my
But yeah, so
gosh, they're
they're so
so
cuddly. They just love
cute.
attention. Yeah.
Oh
Minky.
my goodness. How did they become orphaned?
They each have a story. Mostly it's they're picked up in the wild without a mother,
Yeah.
and then with that Cindy, they just send them to us, and we would raise them, and yeah, so they live a good life here.
Wow, I bet. They're adorable.
So Kiori, how are you doing, and where in the world are you currently?
I'm doing great, thank you. It's 9 o'clock in the morning in Columbus, Ohio. That's where I am at the moment.
Okay, nice. So we're quite far away. It's probably like 8 hour distance.
Where are you right now? Namibia?
Namibia, yeah. So it's next to South Africa, in Southern
Gotcha.
Africa.
Yep.
Yeah, quite hot here. We're waiting for rains. I'm living in a desert country, so it's very hot.
In the United States, we've had a bit of a drought this summer too. Here in Ohio, we had one of the worst droughts we've had in decades. So yeah, praying for the rains.
So Coyote, tell me a bit more. Where does your nickname Coyote comes from?
Coyote's a nickname I've had since I was about 8 years old, and it was given to me by my mother. We used to travel across the United States a lot from Ohio out to the southwest of Arizona, New Mexico, and that general vicinity. And I was obsessed with catching lizards as a kid. And one of the top predators in the desert ecosystem for lizards is roadrunners. And there's a famous Warner Brothers cartoon called The Coyote and the Roadrunner. And I used to follow roadrunners around hoping, I had this crazy theory that if I found a roadrunner and I slowly followed it, I would be able to see if it was going to catch a lizard, I could scare off the roadrunner and then try to catch the lizard. And my mom started calling me the coyote because I was always chasing roadrunners around. My neighborhood friends then dropped the, it just became coyote, and it sort of stuck ever since.
So that's where your slogan comes from.
No, the background of Be Brave, Stay Wild was actually sort of borrowed from Steve Jobs' Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish. I remember when I heard that for the first time, it was such an impactful bop, 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 bop. And when my business partner Mark and I were working on branding and launching ourselves into the digital space, one of the things we recognized in YouTube way back in the old timey days, like 2014, is that if you had this repetitious cycle to things, people would start to implant that into recognizing the content, recognizing the style. And of course, from the brand building perspective, we were really keen on that. So we looked at the Stay Hungry, Stay Foolish, and we're like, how would you assimilate that to something that's wild and adventure? And then Be Brave and Staying Wild sort of became a piece of my signature sign off, but that also closely aligned with Brave Wilderness as a brand for being brave, staying wild. So it was very well thought out, but it caught on, and it's been there now for over a decade.
You definitely live up to it. The videos I see, you're definitely a brave man.
Or some people might say a little crazy, but yes, I like the
Yeah.
compliment of brave beyond crazy.
So, Coyote, how would you describe yourself?
I would describe myself as an extremely ambitious, curious, and always open-minded person when it comes to all aspects of my life, and specifically my business and my drive to promote wildlife education and conservation. Growing up, animals and dinosaurs both were a huge thing for me. So getting the chance to have the profession that I have now, which is very much self-created, all comes from that ambition. My actual collegiate background is in screenwriting, producing, and directing. So at my core, I love to tell stories, and the producer and director in me understands how to take those ideas off of a piece of paper or off of a computer screen and turn them into a real world scenario. Obviously, there's a lot of production elements aligned in putting yourself in an environment and then the right place and time to see some of the animals that we come across. But at its core, it's definitely about storytelling.
So, I assume you definitely like animals. And did you grow up with pets? And what was your childhood like?
My childhood was pretty cool. I mean, when I look back on it, I honestly questioned a lot of the things that my mom let me do at a young age. Now, with all the streaming services and like the crime and murder mystery stories that are out there, I liken it to like I could have been one of those kids that disappeared in the woods and never returned because I got swallowed by sink mud in a swamp. Not even kidding you, Ruben. My mom used to go to work in the morning at like 8 o'clock, and me and my neighborhood friends would disappear into the woods. And the only rule was that we had to be back before dark. And in the summer, dark was like after dinner time. So we would like pack lunches and just go out on these expeditions trying to catch snakes and turtles and frogs and fishing and all these things. And I look back on it now and I'm like, man, I guess my mom was just like, well, don't have to get a babysitter. The woods are watching my kid all day. So it was a pretty adventurous childhood, and I spent a lot of time in libraries reading books. I was a big bookworm as a kid, just wanting to absorb information about different animals. And when it comes down to pets, I didn't have a lot of pets per se, but my mom was very open to me catching and holding on to animals for a short amount of time. So whether it was toads, painted turtles, baby snapping turtles, garter snakes, like I sort of had a menagerie of things that like I would catch them. I'd keep them in a terrarium for a couple days, analyze them. I used to draw constantly, so I was drawing pictures of these animals. And then, I understood the process of like, all right, well, these things need to go back to where their home is. I probably am not going to be able to feed them the right way for a continuous amount of time. Although baby snapping turtles are different because they'll eat anything. But things were always eventually released back into the wild. So I say that I had temporary pets for a lot of my childhood.
I grew up as also in the wild. From 3 years old, we would used to walk in the nature. And my mother would be so anxious, but she would let us walk there, and we would build stick houses and catch fish, barbecue it, eat it when we were a bit older. So I can definitely relate to that. And talking
Yeah.
about the snapping turtles, I saw a video where you grabbed this massive one and he's like trying to bite you. My uncle lost his finger through that. When I
Really?
watched that, I was like really anxious, but yeah, I can see you've done it probably since a child, so you know what you're doing.
Well, we grew up in a different enough place where the most dangerous thing I could have run into is literally a snapping turtle. Like we have no venomous snakes where I grew up, no dangerous spiders, nothing else that can bite or sting you that is going to cause a problem, and no major apex predators. I mean, unless you caught a white-tailed deer on an off day, you're in pretty good safe shape.
Was there a pivotal point where you decided this is the path you want to go in life?
Ooh, that's a great question. That pivotal point. You know, growing up loving animals and then going to college to learn screenwriting, producing, and directing, I sort of had these two unique loves, the telling of stories and this fascination with animals. And Steve Irwin passed away in 2006. I was in college at the time when this happened, or just out of college when this had happened. And I grew up watching Steve in the peripherals. You know, he had such an incredible career. His charisma and his passion, his love for wildlife was infectious to anybody that was interested in animals. And certainly for somebody like me who was also interested in telling stories and putting those stories from a camera to a distribution space. So when Steve passed away, it was also around the time that Bear Grylls was making his ascent on Man versus Wild. And my team and I at the time sort of looked at the fact that, like, wow, here we lost this great educator and conservationist in Steve, wonderful presenter and entertainer. And now you've got Bear over here, who's got a different production style with the fast paced editing and the cool camera work, very submersive into the environment, but he's teaching you survival where you're like catching and eating animals. What is like the perfect transect of those two worlds? And we started thinking about, wow, how do we make the next great animal adventure show where we produce it in the style of Man versus Wild, but we stay true to all the conservation and education messages that Steve Irwin was putting out there for the world. So I would honestly say the loss of Steve and the rise of Bear was the most influential point for me in my young career to be like, maybe I could be one of the people that fits into this very small demographic of uh, those that have found success in the wildlife and adventure space mixed with entertainment. And sure enough, we believed we could do it. And 11 years later, here we are.
So you would say Steve Irwin and Bear Grylls was like your childhood heroes, looking up to them
Yeah, my,
because they
my
were
three biggest influences are Steve Irwin, Bear Grylls, and Steven Spielberg. So when you combine all three of them together, you sort of get the conglomeration that's where did Coyote Peterson come from and what was he influenced by? And it is those three individuals for sure.
Yeah, that's amazing. I must say you are like one of a kind, definitely. With the stuff you do, it's really um, nerve-wracking, but very exciting to watch, and I think you do a great job. So well done.
Well, thank you.
So tell me, Kerry, what was your first video you ever put out? What was it about? When did you start to go viral? What was that first? Can you remember a video that really like break the internet?
So we launched on YouTube officially on September 15th, 2014. And the first video that we released was actually one called Diving for Snapping Turtles. And it's got a bit of a funny background. And we chose to launch with that story because the snapping turtle was so influential as a interactive animal for me throughout childhood and throughout developing the idea of a wildlife adventure series. I always joke and say if Steve Irwin had the crocodile, Coyote Peterson had the snapping turtle. Snapping turtle not nearly as dangerous as the salty, but when I was younger, it was the most dangerous thing I could come across in a swamp in Ohio. And for 2 years, we continued to produce content. We did all sorts of really cool stuff. We won an Emmy Award with the first season of a show called Breaking Trail that we produced and released on YouTube, which was pretty exciting for us and sort of became that like affirmation that like, okay, what you're doing is reaching an audience. And that was one of the greatest things about having launched our content on YouTube is that we were actually getting the feedback from our audience and that encouragement to like, just keep going, you can do it. Just keep going, you can do it. And finally, in 2016, the biggest viral video that we had at that point was me intentionally getting stung by something called a cow killer, also known scientifically as the velvet ant, which is a species of wingless wasp. And they're famous for having a longer stinger or ovipositor than any other insect on the planet. So we were like, well, okay, we heard that the sting is painful enough to kill a cow, right? That's where the nickname came from. We filmed this. It turned out pretty good. At the same time, we also filmed me getting stung by a tarantula hawk. We had no idea that it would be crazy popular. And the reason that I was doing this is there is a now late entomologist named Justin Schmidt. Sadly, Justin passed away a couple of years ago, but he wrote a book called The Sting of the Wild. And he tested out all these different insect stings. And we looked at this book and we said, wow, this is fascinating. How do you Steven Spielberg this approach? And what I mean is that Spielberg was so good at taking preconceived ideas, Jaws, Jurassic Park, whatever it might be, and taking the book and turning it into the movie. We looked at Justin's book and we were like, why don't I climb the insect sting pain index through making videos of getting stung by these bugs? Started really with the cow killer and then it just exploded from there. There was a one day when that cow killer video came out, actually the second day that it was live, the channel was doing like 1.2 million views an hour. And we were just like, what is happening? Like it was crazy. It was the true definition of virality before you had Facebook video, Instagram Reels, TikTok, Snapchat, any of these things. So as big as you can ever go from a viral sense, we got to live that moment at one point in time.
And how many views did that post get in the end?
I think it's somewhere around like 60 or 70 million views at this point on
That's
that video,
amazing.
which is pretty crazy for just getting stung by a bug, you know. And there's others that have gone bigger since then, which is always crazy to think about. Sometimes when, I'm just a normal human at the end of the day, but you think about how many people Brave Wilderness has watched. In just the YouTube space alone, we know we've done over 5 billion views. But then when you think of the streaming services, the television shows, the other places that are not even like listed, like we guesstimate that my face has probably been seen over 10 billion times. Like my brain can't even comprehend that, it's wild.
And the amount of people on Earth there is
Yeah, it's crazy.
amazing. What would you say is the most common comment you get on your socials that people ask you or say about you?
Well, people obviously love the bite and sting content. There's no question that that has been the most sought after and well viewed content on our channel. So, one question that I'm always getting is, what is going to be the next most painful sting? And some of the videos were so viral, I think they implanted on so many people's minds, like the tarantula hawk, the bullet ant, the executioner wasp. These videos are all from like 2016 to 2018. And I've done a lot of things since then that have honestly been just as, if not more, painful. So we've got some content that's coming out from Southeast Asia in the course of the next few months here where I go through a handful of uncomfortable situations. But people generally just always usually want to know, well, what's the next big adventure? And the next big adventure is usually something that we have just completed and that people have not seen the episodes for yet. This past summer, we got the chance to travel to Indonesia. Southeast Asia, hit a number of spots, but Komodo dragons were a specific target. And we got to do a lifelong dream episode of filming Komodo dragons in a way that no one has ever filmed them before. When people ask, that's the episode I lean into the most now to be like, get ready for our Komodo dragon epic narrative that's coming out. That's the one we're working on in post-production at the moment.
And how do you select like which animal you're going to feature next? Is it just like a random idea you get, or is it inspired by specific videos you watch?
When it comes to bites and stings, at this point, it's not so much that we've pre-produced or have thought about anything. When we were climbing the insect sting pain index, we obviously had a bit of a roadmap. Now it sort of breaks down to more, we're on location and we do something called batch producing. I mean, as you can imagine, getting to Southeast Asia and being there for 5 weeks is not by any means inexpensive. So we have to get as much content as we can for the time that we're there. And truth be told, you can't do a ton of research on things that are biting and stinging from like the insect arachnid category. It's really tough to like ever even search on the internet or make the contacts to be like, hey, what are these things that I could find and get stung by? So it really breaks down to being in the right place at the right time. If we see something that's flying around and looks colorful, like I will try to catch it. And if we catch it, then we're like, oh yeah, I'll do like a quick test in the field. I know how to get them to show if they've got a
Yeah.
stinger or not. And I'm like, if it stings, it's worth trying. So yeah, we we just kind of find ourselves in the right place at the right time to make the content that we feel the audience is most likely going to click on. And once we've got all that content in the can and we come back into the office life, as we call it, we sort of look at what we have and then we strategically figure out, when and where being what time of year we want to release certain pieces of content. So there's a lot of strategy in how we roll out the videos, but when we're getting them, sometimes you never know because animals don't have a call sheet. It's right place, right time.
So that brings you to my next question. What is the content process like? Is there some safety protocols or some expert support in each destination where you go? Because I would think some of it is quite dangerous and you have to get some support there in some places.
Yeah, it's a great question. You certainly can't just go into a foreign country and expect to either A, know where to go to find these animals the right way. Sure, you can look at a field guide and be like, oh, the general range map is this, which is not relevant in the grand scheme of like really hone in and find these animals. And speaking about Komodo dragons specifically, we had a tight-knit team that we were working with, and we had the right connections that knew where to go specifically and which dragons we wanted to try to track. But that's Komodo dragons. That's like an apex of animal species you can go after. So then when you're talking about like things that might bite and sting you, a great example is I got stung by something called a banded hornet when we were in Southeast Asia. Literally in the middle of filming the Komodo dragon episode, I see this huge hornet flying around, and I've always got my entomology net with me. I end up catching this hornet, get it in a little capsule, and our guide, who we were working with, he's like, wait, what do you want to do with that? I'm like, oh, I want to take it back to the boat, and we're going to film me getting stung on the boat, and then we'll bring it back on land and let it go, and it'll be good. He's like, no, you don't want to get stung by that. I'm like, no, you don't understand. Yes, I do. He's like, I've been stung by one. It is horrible. I'm like, that's what the audience wants to see. Me getting stung by a banded hornet. Super non-typical sting episode. We catch the bug. We literally bring it back to our houseboat. The entire crew of the houseboat is behind the scenes watching and they're just like, these guys are like, what is happening on my boat right now? This guy's literally, he's literally putting this bug on his arm and letting it repetitively sting him. They were losing their minds. They were all filming it for like their TikTok reels. It was crazy. But I mean, that's just an example of one that a lot of times people, experts in certain locations will be like, you don't want to do this. And I'm like, yeah, no, I know I don't want to do this, but the audience would love to see me if I did do it. So, I go through that process and that's how we create some pretty popular content.
They don't understand. They don't understand.
From a safety perspective, what most people should know is that when it comes to venomous bites and stings, unless you're talking about something like a venomous snake or certain marine creatures, most insects and arachnids, a bite is really not going to do anything other than cause you pain, swelling, and itching unless you have an allergic reaction. And in the instance that I were to ever have an allergic reaction, fingers crossed that hasn't happened to me yet, we do have epinephrine pens on site and would be able to essentially get the reaction under control and then get me to some sort of medical facility. But look, I don't want to jinx myself, but the number of toxins that I've taken into my body at this point that have had an effect, but relatively not much of an effect, I think I'm going to be okay pretty much moving forward.
I wonder if you're probably immune to some stuff by now.
I have put myself through some things that most people be like, that would have put me in the hospital. I'm like, it just puts me in a good position to be entertaining and educate you about what it is that I'm going through. And trust me, it sucks. Some of the stuff that I've gone through really sucks. But I'm happy to do it if it's getting people educated about essentially biological landmines to try to avoid when you're out there in nature.
Coyote, what would you say to people that often say in your content that it raises safety or ethical concerns in regards to clickbait or sensationalism? Because I know social media and there's always a lot of people have opinions. So what do you normally say to those people?
There's certainly over the years have been people that have called out like, oh, are you sensationalizing bites or stings or the impact that an animal can have on a human? And look, the answer to that is, yeah, it's entertainment, but if you pay attention to the episode, you're getting more education than you probably are entertainment. And that's why it works. And that's why the mix has been so successful for the past decade. And truth be told, when we first started doing the bite and sting content, we were really hesitant as to how would the audience react to it. Obviously, the proof is in the pudding with the number of views and how long the brand has been going. But we always constantly remind people like to not go out and repeat the things that you see me doing. We take a lot of thought and care into these episodes. And then, of course, we're always very cognizant of making sure that we're not putting too much stress on the animal. When you think about how fragile a bug is, right? An insect or an arachnid, we have never inadvertently killed any bug in the process of filming one of these episodes. And we always make sure I do my best to be able to catch the bug right after it stung me. And then we always make sure by the end of the episode to show that it is being released back into the wild. So, when you think about how many bugs die on a daily basis, people hitting them with cars, squashing them with shoes, whacking at them with fly swatters, spraying them with hornet spray. Look, we've had no casualties in the bug world since we've been filming this. So to say we've sensationalized or we've done anything that's inappropriate, we let those people have their opinions because everybody's entitled to their own, but we don't let it discourage us from producing content that we think is going to entertain all generations, but most importantly, give them an insight to why a lot of these animals are so important to their ecosystems and how honestly, I really have to work hard to find and catch these things. So if you pull that unlucky lottery ticket where you literally have been accidentally stung or bitten by one of these things, I mean, that's just wrong place, wrong time. And these things happen in life because we work real hard to find them, catch them, and then make that stinger bite happen. So it doesn't happen to people that often.
Now, I must say, I really admire the educational part of that as well. So, do you have a favorite creature, and why would you say that specific creature?
Specific creature is such a hard one to ever pin down because there are so many favorites. They're like lifelong favorites, like the common snapping turtle. Snapping turtles in general, I wouldn't be where I'm at if it wasn't for them. Everything that's reptiles and amphibians has sort of been my core love ever since I was a kid. And the thing that's usually the most famous or most favorite at any point in time is something that I'm currently working on in post production. I know I mentioned earlier the Komodo dragon episode, which is something that we're working on at the moment. So currently, I'm super fascinated with Komodo dragons, reading a lot about them, preparing to tell their story from my point of view. And we feel it's a very important story to tell because everybody knows what a Komodo dragon is, but very few people on this planet will ever be able to have the experience with Komodo dragons that I personally had. So to be able to craft that narrative in a way that's going to be entertaining, but also give people that right amount of education becomes my favorite species at the moment because I'm working so hard to make sure that the narrative we craft is one that the audience will enjoy.
And do you have a favorite location where you find these creatures that you really have close to your heart?
My all-time two favorite locations I've been to so far are Japan and Alaska. Alaska is probably number one at this point. For some reason, I just feel like drawn to that area. It's the last wild frontier sort of in North America. And when you're out in the Alaskan wilderness, it's just so vast and massive. It really reminds you how small we all are as individuals, let alone a species on this planet. And when you get that far away from civilization, it just really strikes you hard in your soul to be like, cool, I'm just a tiny piece of such a much, much bigger universe.
I think you should come to Namibia. We have some dangerous stuff here as well.
I'd love
Definitely.
to come to Namibia. I mean, I've been South Africa a few times, but I know in Namibia, you guys got great cheetah conservation organizations and all sorts of cool stuff. So yeah, it's definitely on my bucket list.
My animals won't be a danger, so you're safe here, but
Yeah.
there's many. Is there anything else on your bucket list?
So many places yet to still travel in the world. And I've been to a lot of them, but then when I really think about how I have not scraped the surface, it's kind of true. Like, for example, where you're at in Namibia, I would love to make it to Namibia at some point in time. We are actually eyeballing another Africa trip probably in late 2026 or early 2027. So fingers crossed, could happen. Maybe I could come there and meet some of your animals. Komodo Island was obviously one of my big bucket list items that I checked off this past year. But another one that I have not been to yet is Madagascar. I really want to make it to Madagascar at some point and see the biodiversity that's there. So, yeah, there's always seems to be another place where there are cool animals to tell stories about.
I've been to Madagascar now a few months ago, and it's like really rural and so much wildlife. The roads
Mm,
are quite terrible, so be prepared. But the
yeah.
nature I wanted you to meet Hansi as well.
What? Where'd you pull this out of? What
I do
just
magic.
hang it out there underneath your desk?
Yeah. So he's my patient at the moment. He's staying in my room because he actually had a big incident where something, we don't know if it's a wild squirrel or a warthog or something, like hit him in the balls and they had to be castrated and then it became an infection. So he's my patient. He's
Every
staying
man's
in
worst
my
fear.
yeah. But his name is Hansi and he's gonna stay in my room for like a week until he's back in the wild. So they come and go, so they have a good life. But yeah, he's taking his antibiotics at the moment.
What kind of animal is he?
He's a squirrel, but a ground squirrel, so he don't climb trees. So he's just on the ground.
Got it. So
And
just a ground squirrel. So he's a nutless squirrel.
he is. He had massive balls. I wish you could have seen it, but now he needs new ways to attract the ladies now. So we'll see what he come up
Hey,
with.
maybe he'll be a little bit faster if he's not dragging those things behind him. Maybe he's actually really happy that he got rid of them.
Exactly. So looking back at your career, is there anything you would have done differently than what you did?
Yeah, looking back on the past 10 years, you always can look backwards and hindsight becomes 2020. It's like, oh, should I have done this differently? Should I have done that differently? And truth be told, I think anything that presented itself that didn't happen for us as a brand or me as an individual was for the right reason, right place and time. And I'm a real big believer in that the path is only forward and you learn from any hardships that you go through. And we've worked really hard for the past 10 years to keep a good brand, a positive brand, do our work as hard and as diligently as we possibly can. And look, there are small things that, yeah, maybe I would change, or things that I wish were different. Good example would be that, I had an amazing opportunity to do a wildlife series with Animal Planet. It was called Brave the Wild, and at the time we had the largest first season budget that a show had ever had in Animal Planet history. And I got to travel the world. We made 18 episodes. We were literally in pre-production and already partially funded for season two. And then COVID happened. And that was heartbreaking, not only because of what it was doing to the world as a whole and all the struggles people were going through, but Discovery Communications was like, we can't keep financing an international show to the tune that we're financing this at if people can't travel internationally. So, where would my career be today if we had kept doing the Animal Planet show and I was in season 5 right now? I don't know. But at the same time, the universe didn't want that to necessarily happen. And there's been quite a shift in how distribution is even happening today and the way that different networks and streamers are conglomerated together and the other distribution opportunities. And I look at the freedoms we have distributing in the digital space, and I think anybody that works in entertainment will tell you that be thankful for the freedoms and the creative control that you have, because there are a lot of organizations, shows, productions, what have you, that really are under the control of someone else creatively, and you're just working as a cog in a machine. And we don't feel like that at Brave Wilderness. We have created the machine and we are the ones that are in control of how we drive it forward. So again, there are things that maybe could be different, but I'm very thankful for the way that everything has turned out thus far.
So, Coyote, I'm curious to know what creature's bite or stung was the most painful and what made you the most ill.
Well, on like an individual basis, because at this point, when I get asked that question, I usually say to people my most painful experience that I've been through, which at this point has been putting my hand into a box with 200 yellow jackets, and I was stung about 100 times in 10 seconds. That amount of venom and its effect and the amount of pain that I endured for close to 36 hours is the worst situation I've been through. But then again, we're talking about 100 stings. So the single most painful sting that I have received at this point is the executioner wasp and the Japanese giant hornet. Those are the two most painful. Most people still think it was the bullet ant, but the bullet ant got dethroned by the giant hornet and the executioner wasp. Plus, they're also scarier and they fly, and an ant is still an ant at the end of the day. When it comes to bites, I've been accidentally bitten by Gila monster, which was one of the most painful things I've ever gone through. And getting bitten by any species of centipede intentionally is the most painful intentional bites that I've been through. So it's a bit of a cornucopia of pain situations, but they're all sort of fit into their own unique category.
And some snakes?
No venomous snakes. Never been bitten by a venomous snake. I am very, 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 very careful with venomous snakes. Honestly, in many instances, with the most popular stuff we've done with venomous snakes, I've worked with professionals to show an aspect like how do you milk these venomous snakes of their venom to create anti-venom? And it's just as entertaining as me going out there and trying to catch them and interact with them because sometimes it's just not a risk worth taking, especially if you're in a really remote location.
Because I was about to suggest the black mamba, which is in Namibia. It's probably one of the most dangerous, but yeah, I agree with you. Rather do the educational part there, like milking it, because if you get bitten, you can almost start and dig your own grave. So
Oh,
very
bitten by a
dangerous.
black mamba is a death sentence. I mean, and I've worked with black mamba before. We actually did a really awesome episode where we did a black mamba rescue. There was a farm that was like also like an abandoned car lot. This was a couple years ago. You have to look it up. I think it's called Black Mamba Rescue. This black mamba had killed a dog. There was two of them. The dogs caught and killed one of them, but there was another mamba, so it was probably a breeding pair. And we went and we caught the remaining black mamba, and it was big and it was scary. And you could tell that this snake, it was capable of thinking. Right? When it looks at you, you know that it's like, all right, if I can bite you, I'm going to bite you. And fortunately, the situation was handled the right way, and we rescued it and relocated it. But it was pretty nerve-wracking to work with that snake.
A story I want to tell is my granddad. We used to own a farm here, and he once came across a black mamba driving in his pickup truck, and it stood up on the hindsight, and it luckily the window was closed, but he was like snapping, like trying to bite him, but the window was closed. So they could be quite territorial. So I'm
Oh
very
yeah.
afraid. If I walk in the nature, I always try and look. But yeah, you never know where they are. Their heights are good. So
And they're fast. They're fast and they're intelligent. So watch out.
Coyote, I want to know more about the conservation stuff you do. Can you tell me a bit more about that? And is there any interesting stuff we can look forward to in the future?
Yeah, over the years, Brave Wilderness has been involved in dozens of different conservation initiatives, and they can be as simple as us making social media posts for an initiative that a group is trying to get out to a larger audience, or something as big as physically moving animals from one location to another. Speaking of Africa, we did a big project called Save the Horns that was, gosh, almost 3 years in total where we helped in raising financial support and public support for a big relocation of 25 black rhinos to a protected area in South Africa. We produced a very high caliber dynamic episode behind rhino conservation, what's happening in the world of poaching and anti-poaching unit rangers, how they're trained, all of that. So got some great relationships there and are always advocating for, a lot of those larger sort of iconic species and their preservation. But then you also have a lot of different animals that are lesser known that require important protections. A great example, and this is just one that started developing this past week. We had this wonderful knife company, like physically like adventure camping knives, approach us. They're doing some conservation work for hellbenders, which is the largest salamander species here in the United States. So we are right now working on a collaborative knife project where there's going to be a Coyote Peterson branded knife that's going to be a limited edition run that a certain amount of those proceeds are going towards hellbender conservation and habitat restoration. So it's a small little thing, but it brings a little bit of awareness and a little bit of financial support to an animal that most people don't really think about. And we find that's important for all species. When it comes to bigger animals here in the United States specifically, I just finished directing a feature documentary film about grizzly bears and grizzly bear attacks. Grizzly bears are always sort of in the scope of people wanting to be like, are grizzly bears dangerous? Should we be eradicating grizzly bears? This story talks very much about a group of boys, young college students who were attacked by a grizzly bear, managed to survive, and then use their incident to help sort of redefine this level of forgiveness and how it wasn't the bear's fault. They were in the bear's environment, they were attacked, they lived to tell the story, and now they're using their message to help people sort of support conservation for large predatory species like grizzly bears. And wolves are another big one. And we're getting ready to work on some wolf conservation stuff in 2026, which has been a initiative of ours that we've been very supportive of here in the United States specifically. Wolves are probably the biggest vilified predator that lives on this side of the world. And we are certainly always behind helping people get the right message out there for wolves because honestly, they're not a threat to humans.
Oh, that's amazing job you're doing. Like there's so much to be done, still to be done. There's, for example, in Namibia, the pangolin problem, most traffic in the world. So, and yeah, I want to thank you for what you're doing. The same with the coyotes in Namibia. We struggle with leopards that catch the the cattle, the livestock. So there's always that thing of understanding wildlife, get to live with them, not against them. You're doing an amazing job. Thanks
Yeah,
for your
well,
work.
well, thanks. I mean, it's really the people on the ground that are, instilling all this conservation. They're the ones out there, boots on the ground, actually making the big moves happen. We just get to help them celebrate and push that out to a larger audience.
So is there a message you would like to share about animals and conservation to this audience?
Yeah, when it comes to a good message to walk away from this conversation with surrounding animals and conservation and just our planet as a whole, I think it's to be curious. Be curious and go out there and do a little bit of research. If there's something that you've heard about, whether that's an apex predator or something as obscure as like the hellbender that I was mentioning earlier, you know, be curious about the things that need help on our planet. And maybe it's something that's going to spark an interest in you and it's going to cause you to say, all right, I want to get involved, or I want to learn more, or I want to figure out how I can physically activate to help a species become more well known or better protected. These animals rely on us as a species, humans as a species, to do things for them that's going to prolong their existence on the planet. We are so invasive as a people, right? Humans are constantly deforesting, making fields, building buildings, putting in roadways. I mean, you name it. It's an endless list. And every time that we do that to expand our own civilization, we're encroaching on the civilizations of things that already had natural homes. I mean, how would we feel if somebody came from another planet, was like, no, we're going to go ahead and mow down New York City today, and we're going to put a spaceship landing zone right in the middle of Manhattan? We'd have a big problem with that. It's no different than somebody coming in with a bulldozer in a swamp and saying, I'm going to push out all these frogs, snakes, turtles, herons, whatever it might be, and put a parking lot here. So, we as humans have a responsibility to think about the impact we're having on the planet and know that that's not necessarily going to change. We're always going to have an impact, but how can we look at that impact and then look at what's going to be affected and help those things that are going to be affected find a way to drive their own narrative forward? So, hopefully people continue to love and want to preserve the natural world. I mean, it's continued. I think we just need greater supports and better financing for a lot of these organizations to get further than they're currently getting.
Beautiful message. Yeah, I definitely agree. Coyote, thank you so much for speaking to me. It's been an honor and a real inspiration speaking to you, and I want to invite you to Namibia. We have a beautiful country, a lot of wild creatures out here. So yeah, please come visit us when you can.
I would love to. Well, Ruben, thanks for having me on the podcast today. It was a great conversation, and thanks for sharing all your cool animal friends with me. I think this is the first podcast I've ever been on where somebody brought animals onto the show and it wasn't me. So that was awesome.
Oh, it's awesome. Come greet them next time you're around.
Will do.
Thank you guys for watching, and I hope to see you guys next time.